Pull the trigger. Do it. Now those words didn't sound human. They sounded like metal scraping against bone, like something cold and mechanical had learned to speak. The workshop, usually a place of life, the scent of cedar, the hum of old. Tools, Claire's quiet humming as she sorted supplies went dead silent. Even the air seemed to stop moving. The pistol caught the light as it lifted, a dull gleam of black steel, now aimed square at Claire's head. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My mind refused to put the pieces together, and then that voice, again, slicing through the moment like a knife, she defied the association. Show them what happens to people who think they're above the rules. I didn't have to turn to see her. I could feel her. Marjorie Hale, Clarebrook Estate's self-appointed queen. The kind of woman who turned clipped hedges into a religion and wielded her HOA title like a crown. A golden clipboard clutched in her hand, her eyes cold enough to freeze. A fire. Send her to heaven, Marjorie ordered, calm as a surgeon. Claire's eyes met mine in that heartbeat. Blue flecked with sunlight. Not fear, not exactly. Something else. Acceptance. A silent apology. A goodbye. Wait, I stepped forward. But Claire's fingers brushed mine first. Soft, quick, a squeeze that said everything words couldn't. Then the shot. It didn't sound like in movies. It didn't echo. It cracked. Sharp. Final, Claire's body jolted once before her knees buckled. The sound of her hitting the wooden floor was worse than the gunshot. Blood spread fast, soaking into the grain. Of the boards we'd sanded together, I hit the ground with her, my knees slamming into the wood, my hands already trying to hold her together to keep her here. Claire, stay with me. Stay with me. Her lips moved. No sound. Just a breath, barely there, and the faintest ghost of a smile before the light left her eyes. Marjorie's heels tapped once. Twice, then her voice smooth, detached, like we were just items on her checklist. Secure the property. Remove him. Looked up, my hands soaked in the red warmth leaving Claire's body. My own chest hollow, something inside me tore apart. And in that same instant, something new and darker took root. Not grief. Not fear, revenge, 3 months earlier. The farmhouse didn't smell like death then. It smelled like beginnings. Fresh paint and sawdust clung to the walls. The fields outside held the soft scent of rain-soaked earth, a promise of something better. Claire stood barefoot on the porch, the morning light turning her hair to gold. She held the deed in both hands, almost like it was fragile. "You're sure about this, Aaron?" she asked. Her voice was soft, careful, like she didn't want to hope too hard. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. After 25 years of sirens and concrete, yeah, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. Penny tore across the yard, her tiny feet kicking up dew. Her laugh, that bright bubbling sound, filled the air. For the first time in years, it felt like we could breathe again. "This place," Claire whispered, "it feels alive." "It's ours," I said. The first sign should have been the silence after the moving truck left. The second was the sound of heels on gravel the next morning. I turned, and there she was. Framed against the pale dawn like a warning dressed in pastel, Marjorie Hale. Her hair was perfect. Not a single strand daring to move. The clipboard tucked under her arm looked less like paperwork and more like a weapon. "Mr. and Mrs. Miles," she said, her smile tight, her voice sweet in the way poison is sweet before it kills. "Welcome to Clearbrook Estates," Claire smiled. Politely, the way good people do when they meet new neighbors. "Thank you. We're excited to be here." Marjorie's eyes didn't meet hers. They moved over the porch, the siding, the mailbox. Every inch of our new life, judging, measuring. "I'm Marjorie Hale," she said, "President of the Homeowners Association. We take pride in our standards here. I trust you'll understand the importance of compliance." Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small device. A laser measurer. Claire blinked. "You're measuring the fence?" Marjorie smiled. It wasn't a smile. It was a warning dressed as one. Rules keep order. Order keeps value. Value keeps us all safe. Her words slid under my skin, quiet but sharp. At the time, I told myself it was just protocol, just a neighbor doing her job. Later, I'd realize it was the first shot fired in a war we didn't know we'd signed up for. That night, Claire stood at the kitchen sink, the last of the sun painting her face in warm gold. She turned, her hands still damp from the dishes. "Do you think we made the right choice, Erin?" I kissed her temple and wrapped my arms around her. "Best choice we've ever made. If only I'd known how fast that dream would bleed into a nightmare for the first few weeks." Clearbrook felt like the dream we'd been chasing all our lives. Morning sunlight spilling across wide-open fields, Penny's laughter echoing through the farmhouse halls, Claire humming under her breath while unpacking dishes we hadn't seen since the city. It was quiet, not the heavy, suffocating quiet of isolation, but the gentle quiet of a place finally letting you breathe. Every evening, we'd sit on the porch and watch the sky burn orange. Claire leaning against me with her tea, Penny curled up with a blanket. For a while, I let myself believe this would last. The first note showed up on the 5th day, a single yellow slip folded neatly in our mailbox. "Fence paint does not meet Clearbrook HOA standards. Compliance required within 10 days. I read it twice before laughing. You've got to be kidding me. Claire took it from my hand, squinting at the neat, sharp handwriting. "It's a fence. Any ways can you paint a fence?" "Apparently, not this one," I muttered, crumpling the slip and tossing it on the counter. We shrugged it off. Quirk. A harmless first brush with small-town rules. The second notice arrived 3 days later. This one wasn't folded. It was taped to the barn door. "Unauthorized structure on property. HOA review pending." Claire stared at it, her lips pressing into a thin line. "The barn's been here for 50 years. Guess it didn't get their permission slip signed?" I said, trying to keep it light. Claire didn't laugh this time. That evening, we sat in the kitchen long after Penny went to bed. The yellow slip sat between us like some unwanted guest. Claire sipped her tea, her voice low. "She's testing us." I didn't ask who she was. We both knew. "She'll get bored," I said. Claire met my eyes. "Don't get bored. They get brave." A week later, the mandatory inspection notice arrived. "Your property has been selected for a scheduled compliance review. Failure to comply will result in escalation." The words sat heavy on the page. Escalation. Claire set the paper down slowly, her voice flat. She makes it sound like a war. I forced a smile I didn't feel. It's just an inspection. Deep down, a knot began to form. It was a Tuesday, warm, still morning. Claire was in the workshop, Penny chasing the barn cat in the yard. I was stacking feed orders when the sound of engines crawled up the gravel drive. Not one, not two. 6 black SUVs, windows tinted so dark they swallowed the sun. Claire stepped out of the workshop just as the first door opened. Men in matching navy jackets stepped out, boots crunching against the gravel. Badges flashed, shiny, too shiny. One of them spoke, his voice clipped. "Are you Aaron Miles?" I wiped my hands on my jeans, forcing my voice steady. "What is this?" "Community Enforcement Division," he said, like it was supposed to mean something. "Your property is under investigation for multiple violations and unauthorized activity." Claire came to stand beside me, her towel still in her hands. "This is our home. What unauthorized activity?" He didn't answer. His eyes flicked. To the workshop, then to the barn, and then she stepped out. Marjorie. Perfect hair. Perfect posture. That same golden clipboard tucked under her arm like it contained the secrets of the universe. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she said softly. Claire's voice sharpened. "You can't just storm into someone's home without a warrant," Marjorie smiled. "It wasn't kind. It wasn't meant to be. You don't need one." The man's hand brushed the holster at his hip. Claire stepped forward, chin high. "Gear. Not stepping 1 foot in this house." Marjorie's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "Shoot her." The words hung in the air like poison gas. "Shoot her." For a moment, even the wind outside seemed to die. Claire didn't move. Our eyes locked on mine, calm in a way that terrified me. The man holding the gun hesitated, his jaw tightened. His finger twitched against the trigger guard. Marjorie's voice sliced through the silence. "Do it now." I stepped forward instinctively. "You fire that gun?" And Yule Claire's hand brushed mine, soft and fleeting. A single squeeze, a goodbye without words. The sound that followed was the end of everything. The gunshot cracked the morning open. Birds scattered from the trees. Penny's laughter from the yard turned into a scream I'll never forget. Claire's body jerked once. Before her knees buckled, the towel slipped from her fingers, fluttering to the ground like it was mocking gravity. I caught her before she hit the floor, my knees slamming into the wood. "Claire, stay with me. Please, stay with me." Moved. I bent close enough to hear a whisper that barely carried. "Aaron." And then, nothing. The warmth left her body in seconds. The world blurred. Marjorie's heels clicked against the wood. Her voice was calm, detached. "Secure the property. Remove him." Two of the men stepped forward. Hands grabbed my shoulders. I didn't fight. Couldn't. I was holding my whole life in my arms as it bled onto the floor. The service was small, not because she deserved small, but because half the town was too afraid to come. Penny sat beside me, her small hand gripping mine so tightly it hurt. Every word from the pastor blurred together. Every flower felt like a wait. Instead of a tribute, neighbors whispered behind their hands. "HOA business, compliance action. Such a shame." Shame. That's what they called it when a woman was shot in her own home for protecting it. When it was over, I stood alone by the grave long after everyone left. The dirt smelled of rain and endings. I touched the wooden marker with her name carved into it and whispered, "They think this is the end. They have no idea what they've started." Grief hollowed me out in the days that followed. But in that hollow, something else started growing. Not forgiveness. Okay, plan. I tore through everything Marjorie's fake enforcers left behind. Papers, files, patterns in the chaos. Every violation followed the same thread, properties sitting on prime land. Land the HOA wanted. Claire's blood was spilled for a number on a map. One night, sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by papers, I found it. A map with red lines, parcels circled like prey. Right in the center, our farmhouse, and in the margin, a note in ink. MH secure priority. Lots of sap. H. Marjorie Hale. I stared at it until the paper blurred. This wasn't about rules. This was a land grab, and they had just given me the only thing. I needed a reason to burn it all down. The farmhouse was too quiet after the funeral. Not peaceful quiet. Hollow quiet. Claire's favorite mug sat untouched on the windowsill, her boots by the door. The scent of her lavender soap still clinging to the bathroom like she might walk back in at any second. I sat at the kitchen table night after night, surrounded by yellow slips and violation notices like they were crime scene photos. Grief doesn't come like a storm. It comes like a slow leak. Drop by drop, until you're drowning without realizing. But somewhere between the tears and the silence, something changed. Grief started to harden. It became fuel. I went back to the workshop first. The bloodstain was gone, scrubbed away by someone. Who thought erasing the evidence would erase the crime? But they didn't know me. I'd carve her name into every wall if I had to. I started digging. County records, property deeds, old permits. Every line of red tape the HOA thought would keep people blind. The pattern was there, clear as day once you knew what to look for. Every property Marjorie's Community Enforcement Division had touched sat on. A section of land marked for development. Our farmhouse wasn't just a home, was leverage. One night, I found the document that changed everything. A confidential memo with a list of priority acquisitions. Next to ours, $2.4 million, fast track. Approval pending clearance. Clearance. That's what they called it when they put a bullet in my wife. I needed proof. Not just for me, for everyone. I set up cameras. Every road in and out of Clearbrook. Every corner of Marjorie's pristine HOA office. Then I went neighbor to neighbor, quietly, carefully. Most shut their doors. Fear makes people small, but a few opened them. An old man down the road handed me a letter. Find me for a wheelchair ramp. Said the color didn't match the aesthetic. I paid. Couldn't fight M. A young couple showed me photos of their torn-up garden. She said it violated code. We didn't even get a warning. Piece by piece, the picture came together. This wasn't enforcement. It was control. The breakthrough came from a neighbor I barely knew, a quiet woman who never made eye contact until that night. She slid a flash drive across my table. Security cameras, she whispered. The day it happened. I plugged it in, my hands shaking, and there it was. The workshop. Claire. Marjorie's voice. Clear as a bell. Shoot her. I didn't cry. Not then. I smiled, because now I had the match to light the fire. The first shot I fired wasn't made. Of lead. It was dated at exactly 8 a.m. Every email address tied to Clearbrook pinged with a single message. No subject line. It's just a link in one word. Watch. The video was only 30 seconds long. It didn't need to be longer, Claire. The workshop. The sound of her voice just before the gunshot, and Marjorie Hale's order, crystal clear, shoot her. I sat at the kitchen table, the screen light flickering off my face as I imagined every neighbor hitting play. By noon, the neighborhood was alive in a way it hadn't been in years. Driveways filled with small groups whispering, then shouting. Phones lit up. Doors slammed. Fear shifted that day. For the first time, it wasn't sitting on our porches. It was sitting on hers. That night, I didn't sleep. I printed copies of the deeds, the confidential memo. The map with her initials circled like a signature of guilt. By dawn, every doorstep in Clearbrook had an envelope waiting. Inside, proof that the HOA wasn't protecting property value. It was carving up land for private sale by morning. The quiet suburban streets felt like a fuse had been lit. This wasn't my fight anymore. It was everyone's. On the third day, I walked into the HOA headquarters, not alone. Half the neighborhood followed, their voices rising behind me like a storm. Phones recording. Eyes burning with something I hadn't seen before. Marjorie stood at the center. Clipboard clutched so tight her knuckles went white. Aaron, she, said, her voice sharp but trembling at the edges. You don't know what you've started. I dropped the flash drive on the table between us. No, Marjorie, you don't know what you ended? Behind me, someone spoke up. The old man with the wheelchair ramp. You made this a prison. A woman's voice cut in. You took our homes. The noise swelled until it was a roar. And then the sheriff stepped through the door. Marjorie Hale, he said, his voice carrying the weight of every eye in the room. You are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, and unlawful use of force. For the first time, her perfect mask cracked. And it was beautiful. The men in navy jackets tried to scatter. They didn't get far. The fake badges didn't mean much when the real law showed up. One of them met my eyes as they cuffed him. Opened his mouth like he wanted to explain. I didn't care. You don't explain bullets. The courtroom smelled of old paper and quiet judgment. Marjorie Hale sat at the defense table, her golden clipboard nowhere in sight, replaced with cold steel. Cuffs. Her hair, once perfect, hung limp around a face that had built an empire of fear. Neighbors filled every bench. People who'd once lowered their voices in her presence now sat shoulder to shoulder, waiting to watch the Queen of Clearbrook fall. The prosecutor played the footage. Shoot her. The sound of Claire's last breath filled the room. You could feel it settle in everyone's chest. Heavy and suffocating. Even the judge shifted in his seat. Marjorie didn't blink, didn't flinch, but her fingers clenched once around the edge of the table. When the jury left to deliberate, the room stayed silent. It didn't take them long. Guilty on all counts. Those words didn't bring Claire back, but they built the first brick of something else. Justice when they led Marjorie past me. She didn't scream or spit or threaten. She just leaned slightly as the deputies walked her by and whispered, "You think you won? Someone will take my place?" I didn't raise my voice. Didn't even stand. I'll be waiting. Clearbrook didn't change overnight. Fear doesn't vanish in a day. But something in the air shifted. Neighbors met eyes again. Voices carried warmth instead of whispers. The farmhouse wasn't silent anymore. Penny's laughter filled the halls again. light and clumsy and perfect. One evening, I stood on the porch as the sun dipped low over the fields. The sky burned gold, and for the first time, the land felt alive again. Claire's favorite mug sat on the windowsill, sunlight catching its chipped edge. I touched it gently and whispered, "We made it, Claire. We're safe." A week later, an envelope slid under my door. No return address. No signature. Inside, a single sentence in neat handwriting. "Thank you for standing up. You didn't just save your home. You saved all of us." I sat there for a long time with the letter in my hand, the weight of it heavier than any verdict. For the first time since the gunshot. My chest didn't feel hollow. It felt whole. Clearbrook looked different after the trial, not because of new paint or fresh fences, because of the way people carried themselves. For years, we'd all walked with our shoulders hunched, eyes averted, afraid to breathe too loudly in case Marjorie Hale decided it broke a regulation. Now, when I stepped out on the porch, I heard laughter. Not Penny's, though hers had returned in bursts of sunlight, but grown adults laughing like they hadn't in years. The knock came to mornings after the verdict. An older man stood on the porch, his hat twisting nervously in. His hands, I recognized him from down the road. I don't know what to say," he started, voice gravelly. "I've lived here 20 years. Never thought anyone would stand up to her. You did what none of us could." Before I could answer, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden carving. A bird. "My wife made it," said Claire. "Deserves something that lasts." I held it like it was glass. "Thank you," I managed, my throat tight. By the end of that week, the farmhouse porch had turned into something new: flowers, handwritten notes, little tokens left by people who had been too scared to speak before. One envelope held a simple line: "You reminded us, this is our home." Penny collected every note like treasure. One evening, she looked up at me with that same spark Claire used to get when she was about to say something profound. "Mom would like it better now," she said. "Yeah," I whispered. She would. The HOA was dismantled piece by piece. The new board wasn't perfect, but they were human. They listened. We tore down the old rules like they were rotten wood and built something stronger, fairer. Every hammer strike, every coat of paint felt like reclaiming ground we'd lost long before Claire died. The farmhouse walls echoed with sound again, not grief but life. One night, long after Penny had fallen asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with Claire's mug in my hands. The house was still, but not empty. I wrote a note on a scrap of paper and tucked it under the mug. We did it together. For the first time in months, I slept without waking in the dark. Winter faded slow that year. Like the land itself was cautious to hope again. When the first wildflowers broke through the frost, Penny ran through the field barefoot, her laughter spilling into the soft morning air. She clutched a handful of blooms to her chest. "Daddy," she called. "Mom would like these, right?" I swallowed against the ache in my throat and nodded. She'd love them, baby. We placed the flowers on the windowsill next to Claire's. Mugged up for a long moment, the house didn't feel heavy. It felt whole. By summer, the farmhouse had changed. Not in walls or paint, but in soul. One evening, I took a can of paint and a brush and stood in the workshop where it had all ended. The wood was new. The memory was carved deeper than any stain. I painted her name. Not small, not hidden. Sweeping letters across the wall, Claire? Penny stood beside me, her small hand gripping mine. "Now she'll never leave," she whispered. I kissed her hair, as she never did. Weeks later, another envelope slid under the farmhouse door. Inside, a single line in neat handwriting. "You didn't just fight for her. You fought for all of us." It's no signature. Didn't need one. Time didn't erase what happened. It never could. But it softened the edges. Clearbrook became something new. It's not perfect, but free. The farmhouse stood at the center like a scar turned into a badge of survival. Penny grew. The laughter stayed. In every spring, wildflowers bloomed brighter than the last. Sometimes, I'd sit on the porch at sunset, Claire's mug warm in my hands, and whisper to the wind, "We kept your dream alive." And every time, without fail, The breeze would shift just enough to feel like an answer. Love, when it's real, doesn't vanish with bullets or fear or rules written on paper. It lingers in walls, in fields, in the voices of those who refuse to forget. And in this little farmhouse, Claire never left. Not really.